Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Indie Film Wrap. Today, I'm very excited to have special guest Daniel Feighery. Daniel, it's great to have you here.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Of course, yeah. I'm excited. There's so much that I want to get to. But first off, I love talking about origin stories. So if you could share with us what first inspired you to become a filmmaker.
Well, I guess my story isn't that great to be self-effacing from the front. No, I grew up being interested in like science as a kid, which is not what I think many people would think of when they think of film, but like it helps with the technical aspects of things, and there's a lot of I don't know, like problem solving is like the biggest thing that you do on film sets most of the time. So I think that really helped. And I also had a background in painting and art, and then also in theater growing up and music. And it felt like everything kind of came together in college for me. I actually visited a film set, and it suddenly became sort of real to me, the idea that there are actual people that make movies that are not like some far away distant, that I could actually make them.
Yeah, that's
and that was really the moment when it kind of like all came together. I took some film classes on a whim in school and then really enjoyed it, and it was visiting a real film set where I saw like, okay, I can do this,
I think that's a great point, because there is definitely a third wall, when we grow up as kids and we're watching movies and there's the literal screen in front of us. And I know for me growing up, I never had any idea of how to get on the other side of that. Like, it just all felt like make-believe. And so I think that's neat that you getting to be on a set and see how the magic comes together really helped to inspire that path. And I also love what you were saying about, being interested in the sciences, because I do feel like filmmaking and a lot of the technical camera work, DP, which is a lot of what you do, is very technical. And there are equations involved. I think some people get into film because they do have this, there's a mystery about it and they think it's all art and, but there is math and there is science involved. So that's a great thing to remind our viewers of.
Totally. Yeah. I have a friend who teaches a class at NYU that's the only arts class that's also a science class, and he teaches the science of cinematography. Yeah. And I think that like we all love the art of it, and that's where we all come to film from. But it really it came to like for me it's an amalgamation of a lot of different disciplines, really.
Yeah, and I know with you, so you do DP work, you do producing, you do directing. Which came first, and how did some of those other ones evolve?
Well, we all are taught to be directors in film school, right? But pretty early on, I think I was still in school when I said, like, there's not going to be like 40 directors coming out of this major every year.
That's the mathematical, realistic side of you going, I'm equating.
Yeah. There aren't that many directors out there. And I don't know, like I said, I really came to, I was a visual artist in the beginning, in painting and drawing, and for me that it started with cinematography. It was like the next kind of step. Like I also obviously did photography a lot as a teenager too, and so I really started there. I had like some aptitude at it more than I did. Like dealing with actors seemed impossible to me when I started. Now I'm a little better, but I'm still not really like I did some theater, but that was the harder that was a later hurdle that I am still trying to get past. So
I do feel like it's harder to hurt a camera's feelings than an actor's feelings. So
yeah, it all just seemed very nebulous to me, sort of. And so yeah, I worked my way up in the camera department. That's how I approached things. I was a PA for like 2.5, 3 years after college, and I went to go work at a camera rental house because I asked people on set, like, okay, what's the best job? And it always seemed like the camera guys were the coolest. No offense to anybody else. But that was my perception anyway. And I went to them and asked them, like, how'd you get to your job? And they said, like, go work at a rental house. That way you get to know the cameras. Because it was also, like, higher end. When I first started, everything was film, like 35 millimeter or 16 millimeter. And there's, like, it's a very high barrier to entry. So the only way to get to know those was to go to an actual camera rental house where they had Panavision and Arriflex, 435s, and to get to know the cinematographers and the assistants who would come in and rent those cameras, get to know the people that were working as floor technicians there, and it was like a natural sort of apprenticeship program.
yeah, that's a great point, because I think a lot of times people think about being on set, but I feel like the beautiful thing about the film industry, and I do acting too, and some of our viewers are actors. There's no one right way in.
Yeah.
So if there's another path that still connects you, that can be great to explore. So I think that's great about working at the rental shop, because then you get very familiar with the equipment and the people who are renting the expensive equipment and building those relationships. So that's a great tip.
I mean, for me, it kind of came from like studying Renaissance painters, where like they would all have these apprenticeship houses of people that would spend 20 years mixing, palettes of paint for, Da Vinci and Michelangelo. And that was how you got into painting back then. And it seemed like artisans and craftsmen, that's a way in many industries. If you want to be a carpenter, you work for like a better carpenter and they teach you.
With that in mind, who are some of your favorite cinematographers?
I've worked for a lot of them as I worked my way up. Somebody who was really influential for me was Harris Savides, who he's passed away actually, but he was widely known as like the cinematographer's cinematographer. He did like so many movies and so many great projects that were like so eclectic. I guess he was better known for movies like Zodiac, Birth, and The Game. He worked on Seven. He shot music videos for Madonna and Radiohead, Nine Inch Nails, and like it's sort of like he was such a great person, like first and foremost, and he approached cinematography with such a like joie de vivre, like a sort of experimental philosophy.
Yeah, okay. Someone who's just so passionate about it that it shines through.
Yeah, and he also was very Buddhist about it too. Like he just, it was funny. Like he would be on set and you would ask him a question and he would just sit there and he would wait like 5 seconds before he answered. and like, cause he would just, you could tell he had so many wheels turning in his head and he just wanted to say, like, he was just so smart and very affable. And, I mean, that's like, there's so many guys that I've worked with that have gone on to great things. Like, I mean, I was lucky to assist Darius Kanji a few times and Janusz Kaminski. And down the road, I would love to work with like, Steven Soderbergh, who shoots a lot of his own stuff.
I've noticed on your IMDb that it looks like you've gone from doing a lot of scripted to more documentary. Can you talk about that? Talk about that journey or that path?
I mean, I guess I've always been interested in both. And I kind of learned through my work coming up as an assistant that diversification can be a very valuable thing. It kind of like got me through the pandemic, to be honest, because a lot of union shows were shut down, and I did a lot of smaller NGO and eco doc projects. A lot of like stuff that was actually broadcast live that you can't even like see now, like
Wow.
live theater projects that had to pivot to,
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah.
because they had no other way to keep themselves afloat. So that happened for a lot of theater.
Especially being, are you based in New York? Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, great place for that.
And no, I've always been interested in documentary for the truth telling aspect to it, especially when I got too jaded working on commercial sets, which can happen.
Yeah.
You got somebody in the agency saying, like, should he be wearing a red shirt or a blue shirt? And you're like, we're 20 takes in.
Yeah, when the client is on site and making changes or, telling you,
Sure.
making requests that may not be possible, but they
Yeah,
don't
yeah, that
realize they're not
happens.
possible.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing we like about drama and like narrative work is like creating a fictional world, which is the thing that I really enjoy about it. But then there's also being able to tell powerful stories that have social impact or can make a real difference in the world for a different reason. And they both have their place. And so I've always tried to, I guess it's coming from my background doing, painting, theater, music, like wanting to be multifaceted.
I mean, that's a great point about diversifying, so that, like you said, if something happens with one field, or if the work is going away in a specific area, you still are skilled in another aspect of filmmaking.
Yeah, and a lot of it came from music too, because I used to love shooting live shows, and like if you want to get into documentary as a cameraman, that's a great training ground. Going and shooting concerts will teach you to be quick on your feet, to try and capture shots and frame things as it's happening in the moment, and there's never going to be a take two. So a lot of it came from just wanting to go to shows and capturing a lot of it, because I was always into music and music videos, and that was another, like, a lot of that stuff translates on set when you're shooting a real music video. Sometimes a performance is unique and you're not going to replicate it the same way that you did. So a lot of these things cross over. And especially now with commercials, you have a lot of commercials that are wanting a documentary style. So it's like, well, where is the boundary? Everything gets blurred.
As an actor, we hear the term, you'll see casting or breakdowns for real people, and that's very much so that like documentary style look, so that it doesn't feel so commercially.
Sure, yeah, and there's a real move towards authenticity, and that's, it's good training for that. And on the flip side, you get a lot of like documentaries that feel a little commercial too, which like, you can take or leave sometimes.
Yeah. So with this, I know we were talking about some of that truth telling, and that's kind of what pulls you to documentaries. I'd love to hear more about Agent Orange, Gagetown. I'd love to hear the kind of the span of filming that, because I know documentaries can take a long time, and maybe some things you learned along the way.
Yeah, when I started that project, some people told me like the average documentary is 6 to 10 years, and I was like, psh. And I'm well past that now. This was like a project that, I mean, it's not really even a project because it's so tied up with my family, and it sort of is something that wasn't really, I mean, I guess I pursued it, but it also just happened to me, and I didn't really have a choice in a lot of ways. I heard these rumors about Agent Orange being sprayed on this military base where my mom grew up. And in the beginning, I didn't really want to believe they were true. And then, and I didn't really want to believe that they were connected to my sister's disability, because she was born paralyzed from the waist down, with spina bifida. And spina bifida is one of the only things that the children of Vietnam vets are afflicted with, because if these toxic chemicals called dioxins, which can be passed down generationally, into things like birth defects. The research is still happening, and anyway, so my sister got this check for $20,000 from the Canadian government, as compensation because of this program that they started, because this cover up was finally exposed by a general's widow. The general was killed and by chemical exposure, basically, and she went public with it. It was something of a scandal in Canada, although a lot of people don't know about it still. And so I started going there and meeting people who saw the sprays. Started wanting to ask, like, why did they spray this stuff up there, and what's the, like, who did this, and how did it, it's all tied into the chemical manufacturers Dow Chemical and Monsanto. And it turned into this gigantic story that I originally tried to tell from like a third person objective, old fashioned documentary perspective a little bit. And it really wasn't working in the way that I wanted it to, until I started to incorporate my family story and the personal aspect of it. But as I started to do that, it started to create tension in my family too. My sister started to push back on it. I was starting to look at her as a victim of all this stuff, and I still don't even know exactly. It's such a difficult thing to talk about survivors and victims and not define them by that. Like, no one I can't speak for a blanket, but like, there's a certain distaste of, like, or most people with a disability don't want to be defined by their disability or have it be the first thing that you know about them.
My youngest brother has autism, so I definitely can understand and empathize with that, and I understand what you're saying.
And it becomes a very tricky thing to deal with as a filmmaker, and to bring these personal aspects to a film. And people want, like, my sister wanted to be celebrated just for being herself, and so I had to put the project down for a long time, and it took me a while to struggle through all that and to finally start to discuss it with her. And we've kind of come around full circle to it now, where I'm putting that struggle into the film as my own sort of narrative arc in a way. But I hope that it's something that, people in maybe a situation like yours or other people who want to be like an ally will understand the difficulties and the blind spots that we all come to.
And I think that's so neat and so almost indicative of documentary filmmaking, is where you can think you have this idea of what you set out to do, and then by the end it can morph so much. And so I think that's really neat that you're weaving your personal story into it, and that it's shaping up to be something different than maybe as intended. And where is the film at now? Can people watch it? Is it like it's still in the festival circuit, or is it available? Or
we're revisiting interviews now. So I'm actually, and especially because the story of pesticides is changing. Like, a lot of people may not know that, like, Monsanto is paying out hundreds of millions of dollars for Roundup in lawsuits right now. Just a few months ago, Dow Chemical was sued for another pesticide, chlorpyrifos, and I'm mispronouncing it. But
they make it difficult to pronounce on purpose.
Thanks. Yes. And so that science is changing as well. And that was one of the, like, I started to study Gagetown as a microcosm, and the macrocosm, like, the big picture is changing. And so I had to work that into the film. And there was a version that we put out years ago, but like, this is actually a more complete project that is going to go to the festival circuit.
We're looking forward to that. And then, yeah, as we start to wrap up here, another thing I love to get from our guests is with your experience, any fun stories, and this can be like mistakes that you've made on set that now you've learned from, or just like a fun story from set, or interesting tips or tricks.
Fun story on set was working on a horror movie where like half the camera crew either quit or it was a low budget thing. You say your idea of fun is different than my idea of fun. Yeah, well, that's filmmaking. You have to be in it for the torture a little bit. I guess like it was the most surreal thing I've seen was like, I mean, like I'm trying to tell the story quickly, but like there's so many details that are funny about it, but like it was like every bad cliche about a horror movie in a lot of ways. Like these high school kids go to a grave site and they get cursed because they read a poem on a grave of like, in some like, they get haunted by these ghosts, and one of them is like supposed to be a childhood memory. So they like dressed up a little person in a fireproof suit that was supposed to be playing the kid of this guy that's getting like his childhood version of himself. And even though he was in a fireproof suit, they put him into a house that was rigged to go up on fire. We bought a house in North Carolina. They like chopped holes in the roof and in the walls so that they could spray water into it if anything went wrong, with like a volunteer fire department. And there were like fire people in the corners. And then they lit everything on fire. Well, they wanted to light the Talon on fire, and he was supposed to be like this flaming demon. But he was the only thing that didn't go on fire. The entire house went on fire. And I was hired as the film loader on the job. Then I was a second AC when the second quit, and then the first AC when the first AC quit. And so I took on all this responsibility, and then I had to like basically save the camera from going on fire. The fire department rushed in. They like tackled the talent. They hit him, threw him on the floor so hard that he bounced off the floor. Like the fire safety guys like ran out while they were on fire. And then they like wrapped the movie, and they're like, all right, we're done.
Wow.
So I guess like be prepared for anything would be my lesson there.
I mean, I'm used to like, having quote unquote fires on set, but that is definitely the biggest fire on set that I've ever heard. Anything else that you are looking forward to in the future that you want to let our guests know about? Any upcoming or recent projects that came out, whether it's commercial, music video, otherwise?
I'm doing a music video coming up, which should be pretty fun for a friend in Film Shop. And then a short film, which is like a nostalgic, it's called Toe Tag, about an older gay man on Fire Island who's looking back on like romance and a partner of his that died from AIDS during the 80s. That pandemic.
For any guests watching, hopefully there'll be no fire on Fire Island. This will be a no fire short film.
Yeah. There's no fire scenes in that one, so yeah. But I'm looking forward to it for like the flashbacks and shooting in like a vintage style. Which should be fun.
Daniel, this has been so much fun chatting. Everybody, go check out Daniel's work. Your website again?
DanielFeighery.com.
There we are. And thank you so much for joining us on Indie Film Wrap.
Thanks so much.